Today we're at the Youth Empowerment Support Services, acronym YESS, in Edmonton, and it's a youth at risk support program facility. Well, they do a number of things, not only in this building. They have 3 different buildings. Here at this location, it's a drop-in center, so it's open 12 hours a day, 365 days a year, and allows the kids to come in and have somewhere warm and safe and somewhere to get something to eat. And what the Youth Empowerment Support Services group does is they'll reach out to a significant business leader. In this case, it was the CEO and his wife of WHAM Developments, a very successful national property management organization. That couple then reaches out to all of their connections, their social and business networks, bring them in for a lunch, and it's essentially no charge to come in, but it always costs to leave. I say that in jest. These people are introduced to the Youth Empowerment Support Services program. They're told about what happens, and usually they'll bring in a speaker, someone like myself who has these life experiences and that background, to share my story and just help make it relatable. I'm always honored to be able to give something back, and it sounds a bit cliche, but for me it's not cliche. Anyone who really knows me knows I treasure the opportunity to come out and help people understand that by helping one person, they have no idea exponentially how many people they may be helping. So for me, huge honor. But I first want to introduce myself. Ken Franczek is my name. I actually recognize a lot of faces in the crowd, which is terrific. I'm the General Manager of Crystal Glass Canada. I work with the Bean family. I have for 20 years. I started at the bottom in their organization, and through a bit of hard work and some terrific luck and a great family that I work with, I was able to work my way to the top. I also leverage that into a number of business interests. I have partnerships in a number of businesses, partnership in a film company, I have a partnership in a nightclub, sports and fighter management company. I have something else too. It's escaping me. I have a number of small business interests. From a philanthropic perspective, I am an active board member on the board for Raise the Roof, which is a youth homelessness initiative. I represent Western Canada, so I represent you guys in a national campaign to essentially eliminate youth homelessness. I'm active with a number of other groups. I'm a member of Kiwanis. I sit on a steering committee for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Crystal Kids Youth Center. I'm the honorary chair of the new Gridiron Gang for the Edmonton Eskimo Football Club, and there's a number of others, but those are some highlights. And that's really just an effort to introduce myself to you. But that's not why I'm up here today. That's not why I volunteered to come and speak to this group on a relatively regular basis. I'm one of the kids downstairs. So before I start telling you a little piece of my story, what I find really interesting is typically after one of these events, when we all stand around chatting and kind of getting to know each other better, inevitably a number of people will come up to me and say, I get it, that's just like my story. This is what happened to me, and this is what happened to me. And here's my point with that. When I stand up here humbled that you people are here to support and to even listen, because to be candid, I think most people have a story. And I often like to just kind of start off with this, because this isn't about me, it's about everyone, it's about our community, it's about these kids. How many in this room, it doesn't matter what your story is, I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to embarrass you, but how many people in this room would agree at some point in their background they have a story that was a bit of a trick? You've overcome some things in your life to get here. Come on guys, don't be humble, there we go. Because there'll be more, and I guarantee you, there's another 10 or 15 in this room who chose not to put up their hand because they didn't want to embarrass themselves. So again, this isn't really about me, I'm just an example of what happens when a community gets together and supports the children in their area and helps to recognize their true potential. When I was 15, I grew up in Ontario. I grew up in Hamilton, Ontario. I grew up in a very middle-class family. I was definitely a handful, as I am today. I think some of the trickiest kids to handle become some of the greatest leaders when they grow and mature. But I was certainly a handful, and I never want to ever get into the story of how I ended up there, but I will only say this. It came a time just before I turned 16 that I was no longer welcome in my home. So fortunately, I had some family members who were supportive, extended family members. And by supportive, I mean they bought me a bus ticket to Toronto. And so at a couple of days prior to my 16th birthday, I stepped off of a bus in downtown Toronto near Bay Street and looked up. I had about $8 in my pocket and no life experience. And to be honest, I was brought up in a middle-class family. I was not tough enough to be there. And I had to figure out where I was going right now, tomorrow, next week, and so forth. So oftentimes when I hear people talk about being homeless, there's a number of different levels of homelessness. There's homeless, I left my family, or my family asked me to leave and I stayed on my friend's couch. That's homeless, it is. And it's legitimately homeless, and it's tough. But I would refer to that as a bit of a softer homelessness than my experience and the experience of the kids involved here. Again, now I've told you who I am and where I am today. To paint a picture, for the first long while, I didn't understand any of the system. I didn't understand where to go. I knew absolutely no one. I was essentially 15, I'll call it 16. I was a little boy. And I had no idea. So I slept in stairwells of apartment buildings. I slept in cardboard boxes in behind Yonge Street. Most of us have been to Toronto and know that area. I can tell you that I used to watch guys go to the people line up and the crowds go to Maple Leaf Gardens. I slept in the park across the street for months in cardboard with people that I met down there. So it paints a bit of a picture of what that lifestyle looks like. And really, so I painted what it looks like today, and I painted what it looked like back then. And between all of that is a whole series of events. One is the realization you don't belong there, and making decisions that you want to get out. But ultimately, you're one person, you're a child, you don't have life experience, you know very few people, and without support, you're finished. You really don't have a chance. Regardless what you've decided is the right thing to do for you and that you don't belong there, it's great to have a cause and it's great to believe, but if no one else believes, you're standing there by yourself and there's no options. Which is where Youth Empowerment Support Services comes in, and groups like them. I have toured all of their facilities here. I've seen the kids, and I try to practice what I preach. Of late, I've been extremely busy, but in the not so distant past, I spent time coming for lunch, sitting with the kids, talking to them about how they got there, talking to them about what their plans are, listening to some of their dreams, unbelievable, and then seeing the support that they get from this group. Here's why support's important. Again, a story. I had lived on the street until I was almost 19. So I spent about 3 years panhandling, doing other things that I'm not proud of today, just to survive. I saw things that no one should ever see. And when I talk about them, they hit hard, because I got to tell you something, when I'm in my daily routine doing what I do as a business leader in Edmonton, none of this comes forward. As soon as I go there, so I'm going to apologize, I can't help it. I go back and I'm stuck in that place again, and it's a horrible place. I watched someone accidentally shoot themselves in the head in a back alley when I was 17. Nobody needs to see that. These kids don't need to see that. There's so many stories, but I want to talk about a positive story, how people can help, and people who are the least expected to help. When I was about 18, 19 years old, I decided, because I watched someone, again, pass away due to exposure in the cold, someone I knew, someone who was a quote-unquote mentor, associate, an older fella who lived on the street with us, passed away. And I remember a group of us walking up, and there was a police line on Yonge Street, and lots of police. And to be honest, we were laughing and carrying on, and haha, the cops, like you do when you're a troubled teen. And walked up on the line, and they hadn't covered the body yet. And the body was the body of a guy who was someone who kind of took me under his wing rather, when I was on the street. And he had died of exposure in a vestibule area on Yonge Street. And it wasn't that moment, but it was in that time period where I woke up and said, I'm not supposed to be here. What am I doing here? I don't want to end up like this. And I wearing the same clothes, honestly, for months. And well, what am I doing here? Anyways, I made the decision that I wanted to get out of it. For starters, there was a group called the Mercury Youth Services, very similar to Youth Empowerment Support Services, down at Gerrard and Yonge. And what they would offer is they would offer things like, in those days, no cell phones. This was in the early 80s. They had a bank of telephones, and they had all these areas where you could sit and try to call out and look for work. Well, if you recall the early 80s here, well, it wasn't much better in Ontario. So I decided I was going to get a job in the early 80s with no experience living on the street. Yeah, not a lot of people looking for that guy. So I started calling, making phone calls. I came across an ad. All of it is still very vivid. The company was called Ginger's Bathrooms. It's on Eglinton Avenue East, 945 Eglinton Avenue East. Isn't it crazy how you remember those things from 30 years ago? I was given a couple of tokens by Mercury Youth Services. Again, very similar to the support that's given here to give guys an opportunity to get out for job interviews. I paraded out, walked in, said I'd like to apply for the job. I applied for the job, filled out their application form, gave it to the fella in charge, who I didn't know at the time and turned out to be a very good friend long term, but handed him this application form, and he sat that application form on a stack that high. I said, well, how many people are you looking for? Oh, just one. So, oh, okay, so you're looking for one person. How many? He says, I don't know. He says, I'll get to it. We'll figure it out, but I don't know how many people. The job paid $2.25 or $2.65 an hour. It was to drill holes in bathtubs so they could be converted into whirlpools for a high-end clientele. That was the job. So great, I'll take it if it's available. He said, well, I'll get back to you. I'll let you know. I said, listen, I don't have a phone number. I apologize, but I'll tell you what, I will call you. I'll call you tomorrow. So I head back downtown, and I do my own thing, and I keep looking for other work. Next day, I literally panhandled to get, in those days was a dime, and made the phone call from, I can still remember the first call was from a subway station, and the subway kept going by, and I had to, we couldn't hear each other. At any rate, so I'm calling about the job. He says, yeah, no, I haven't had a chance to look yet. I said, well, I'll call you again tomorrow. I did it again the next day. I did that for about 10 days, every single day, because this guy, I wasn't letting him off the hook, and it was the only thing that looked like I might have a chance, because at least this guy would talk to me. So I call him each day, and on about the 10th day, he said, you know what? He said, I still haven't had a chance to look at this thing. Just come. Anybody who's willing to try this hard to get this one job, get down here tomorrow, we'll put you to work. And I did. So I go to work. Now this fella's name is Dan Erklins, and to this day, I'll never forget him. He helped save my life. I went to work, taught me how to drill holes in bathtubs, and I did it the best I could. And I did it for a couple of weeks. And finally one day, Dan approached me and said, Ken, I don't want to embarrass you, but I've noticed you've not changed your clothes since you started working here 2 weeks ago. I said, yeah, about that. Listen, I don't have any other clothes. I actually don't even have a place to live. Each night when I'm done here, I go back downtown and I panhandle, and I stay at the YMCA Stopover, which is a place full of adult men, homeless men. And Dan said, really? Not anymore, you don't. So here's this guy. He was in his early 20s. He was engaged to be married, had a little one-bedroom apartment right near the Eglinton subway station, if any of you know that geography. Little tiny apartment, and he was about to get married, and he surprised his lovely fiancée with a present that night. This guy, this homeless kid who he had just hired, is going to sleep on his couch. I stayed there for 3 months. I stayed there for 3 months while I saved up enough money to be able to get my first room in a rooming house, get some clothing, and start to put my life back together. Dan Erklands didn't know me. Unfortunately, I've tried to track him down with such a unique name. You would think I could find him. I can't find him to thank him now. But Dan Erklands saved my life. Literally, probably saved my life. That's the power of helping one person. So I always like to kind of finish it with this. That one person who helped me had no idea what that influence would have exponentially later. Because here I am now as an adult. I have a terrific wife. I've been married 25 years. I have a 24-year-old son. I have a 21-year-old daughter who, young as she is, just got married and pregnant, so I'm going to be a grandfather. Thanks. I spend as much time as I can with my kids. Shara, you were just with me at the Grey Cup game. My son is always with me. I vowed I would be a better parent. I vowed I would be a better person. I vowed I would do whatever I could do to help others whenever I could. To this date, I can't tell you how many people have lived in our house, but I will tell you there's more than can be counted on one hand. Have I been burned? I've been burned a couple of times. I've also got a couple of people who I know we changed their lives. So I try to practice what I preach. And my point is, that one person who helped me exponentially has now helped probably thousands of people because of the influence I now have in being able to help others. You don't know what that influence can be by helping one person. You're not going to save them all, but you'll probably save someone like me. So from me to you, and whatever you choose to do here, thank you for that, because people like you saved my life. That's all I have to say. Thank you.